obviously, we're all excited about the Philadelphia Eagles going to the Super Bowl. How is this different from the last time they got in?
Well, this is a team I don't think anybody expected to get there. I think this is a team that people thought might be a year or two away. No one thought Carson Wentz would progress as fast as he has. It's a defense that came together. It's a team that came together. There's a very, very strong bond with this group. A bond like no other that I've seen in the Philadelphia sports landscape. The other thing with this Flyers team, there you go, with this Eagles team is it may be a Super Bowl. If they win the Super Bowl, it'll be a Super Bowl champion like no other, in the simple sense that they've done it with a backup quarterback. Doug Williams was a Super Bowl winner. Hostetler was a Super Bowl winner. Neither of those teams suffered the amount of injuries that this Eagles team has suffered. They lose.
It seems like they just keep finding a way to win.
Yeah, and that's been their mantra this whole season. There's been an ability to do things and come together in crucial moments. I mean, you lose your starting All-Pro left tackle in Jason Peters, who's, by the way, despite his age, I mean, he's pushing 40, but he was having one of his best seasons ever. You lose arguably the fastest guy on the team in Darren Sproles. You lose the hub of your defense in Jordan Hicks, who was a turnover machine. I mean, somehow, some way, Jordan Hicks, the last couple of years, was going to cause 5 or 6 turnovers between interceptions and fumble recoveries. He just has a great nose for the football. You lost the heartbeat of your special teams, Chris Maragos. And then you lost the heartbeat of your team in Carson Wentz. And these guys have found a way. I think what's different about this team this year as opposed to the 2014 that went to the Super Bowl is, one, they're a far better team. They are team-oriented on the field. They are team-oriented off the field. That 2014 was supposed to be a Super Bowl champion, but also had a bunch of superstars that thought of themselves and then the team. Obviously, top that list, you had Terrell Owens, who's arguably a Hall of Famer and should be a Hall of Famer. Mm-hmm. You had Donovan McNabb. I mean, Donovan McNabb was a very good quarterback, probably the greatest quarterback in Eagles franchise history. We'll see, where that stands in the coming years with Carson Wentz. But Donovan McNabb, I'm going to go here with this. Donovan thought quite a bit about Donovan first, and when you have your 2-star players that think like that, it doesn't help. And then you had a unbending head coach who was respected in Andy Reid, but I like to respect Andy Reid. Andy Reid, I thought, was a hell of a coach, but there wasn't too much bend to Coach Reid and what he did, and some halftime adjustments, which oftentimes he didn't make. With Doug Peterson, 1, he's unpredictable. 2, he has the ear of his team. He is a player's coach, and Andy Reid was a player's coach, but not to the degree that Doug Peterson is. And he'll go for things. He's bold. He will make moves that really aren't expected, and that's you put all that mix in, and you put it in the kettle and stir it around and cook it a little bit, and what you see is now a team that is 13-3 regular season, 2 playoff wins, 15-3, and they have a chance. They have a chance to beat the New England Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can really ask for, is getting that chance, that opportunity to get in the big game. I mean, obviously, New England has had hiccups in the big game against some teams when they are not expected to, with like the Giants from the East.
Yeah, and that Giants team and this Eagles team have similarities in one very strong sense. Both teams have dominant. Well, that Giants team that beat the Patriots twice had a dominant defensive front. This Eagles team has a dominant defensive front. Fletcher Cox, Tim Jernigan, Vinnie Curry, Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham should be a Pro Bowler, and wasn't. I mean, he had that kind of a season. But then again, you have, they go 6, 7, 8 deep. Every time Chris Long's in the game, Chris Long does something. Chris Long stirs something. He makes something happen. Up the middle. I mean, there's these guys are 5, 6, 7 deep, and throughout a whole game, you see them, and you see the impact that they have on games. Minnesota takes the opening kickoff, drives you right down the field, and scores. They scored on assignment, but they were on their way to scoring a touchdown. The rest of that game, the Eagles shut them down. And the Eagles shut them down because it's a team that they wear you down. They wear you down up front. And we saw that happening against Minnesota. That was also against the makeshift offensive line for the Vikings. I don't know why they did it, but they changed their offensive line in the NFC Championship game. It's the first time that offensive line played together in that configuration. Why you change something like that in an important game, I don't know. But then again, why do you change something like that? And then again, you're going against probably the best defensive front in the game today. I scratch my head and wonder. But that's where this game's going to be won. If the Eagles have a chance to win this game, they're going to have to do what the Giants did. They're going to have to do to a point what the Jacksonville Jaguars did and get heat up on Tom Brady. Because everybody knows, if Tom Brady sees the kind of mistake Najee Good made on that first series against the Vikings in the NFC Championship game, it could be a long day for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on how Blunt and Long have the opportunity to match the accomplishment only Norton and Sanders have done, winning back-to-back Super Bowls with two different teams?
Well, they sure had an impact with the Eagles on and off the field. The players love Chris Long. I do a couple of gigs here in Philadelphia with Malcolm Jenkins and Brandon Graham, and they just love him. Blunt has been a great help on and off the field as well. These guys have not only helped, on the field in terms of the performance, but what they've also done was take a little bit of the Patriot way down here to Philadelphia and giving these guys some real good advice. For example, this week alone, it's been stressed to them that, hey, it's just a game. Play the way, you normally play. Do the things that you're able to do. And that's been the message to this Eagles team this whole week. Don't let this whole thing take you over, as it sometimes can. It's different teams. I'll tell you this, I do sense a little bit of tightness from the Eagles this week, but maybe that'll change next week. I mean, I'm used to a pretty jovial locker room. I saw some stern faces yesterday, some behavior changes that I wasn't used to seeing, and that may change. That may change in time. I think it will. I hope it will. If these guys have any chance of winning this game, being tight going in to play the New England Patriots is not the way to beat New England Patriots. I was a kid when the Oakland Raiders beat the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 15. And I will never forget the little stories surrounding that Raiders victory and how Tom Flores let the Raiders have at it down in New Orleans, let them have at it down on Bourbon Street. As long as you make your curfews, as long as you're on time, as long as you're ready to practice. And when you're practicing, as long as you give it full throttle. The Eagles, on the other hand, Coach Dick Vermeil, put them pretty much on lockdown. And those guys were tight going in. They played tight, and it just completely unraveled underneath it. And that's if I have one concern about the Eagles going into this football right now as we're talking here on Saturday, that would be it.
How accurate was it in Invincibles or in Incredibles? I want to say Invincible. How accurate? Yeah, was that movie? Was it a lot of hype, or was that pretty legit?
There was a lot of hype because it didn't. That story happened in my neighborhood. That's why there's hype to it. It didn't happen in Philadelphia. The bar wasn't in Philadelphia. It wasn't Philadelphia centric. That bar was in my area, in my community. Vince Papale grew up in my community in Glen Olden. The other stuff that happened, Vince did actually play professional football. He played a little bit with the Philadelphia Bell of the World Football League, so that was a little bit skewed. That here's this guy who's quote unquote a 30-year-old bartender who just came out of the blue, out of nowhere, with no football experience. No, Vince did have prior football experience, and actually it was professional football experience. Vince was a very, very good athlete. Vince was fast as the wind. But the other thing too is Vince was also tall and sinewy, as opposed to the Mark Wahlberg character, who's kind of short and muscular. So the other stuff is accurate. Vince was not well liked by a lot of the veterans on that team because he was Johnny Gung Ho, and that seemed to get on the nerves of a team that had to chop off a lot of fat. They were very, very, very lean years for the Philadelphia Eagles. It was a very bad franchise. Vince was a nice little side story to that team, but the main story and building that team up was Vermeil, not Vince. And if you recall in the movie where the Vermeil character, I think it was Gary Kinnear, said to his wife, "That's someone I could build a team around." Vince was not someone you build a team around. You build a team around Jaworski and Wilbert Montgomery and Harold Carmichael and Bill Berge and a defense. That's how you build a football team. The shame of it is, and the thing is, Vince got hurt. His knees couldn't hold up in the end, and he wasn't on that NFC championship team. But he was a beloved figure in the Philadelphia area. He still is, to a degree. I mean, talk about a special team guy that has exceeded more than his 15 minutes of fame. But he's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's raised a great family. His son is a pretty nice player for the University of Delaware right now. So, but quite a bit of, I would say a good chunk of that was contrived. The Philadelphia portion of that was contrived. Vince was from Glen Olden in Delaware County, just outside of Philadelphia, and that happened on a strip out here, about 2 minutes away from me on McDade Boulevard. That bar, I think it was called Tankers or something like that. I don't even think it was called Max's, but it was in Philadelphia. It was in Delaware County. It was in Glen Olden. Had nothing to do with Philadelphia.
Okay, so kind of the same way like Rudy, a lot of it is manipulated. I mean, it sounds like at least, the Invincible was a little bit more accurate.
Yeah, I also know something about Rudy because I know two people that went to school with him, and one of the two was on the Notre Dame newspaper. They couldn't stand him. He was it begins with an A and it ends with an E, and there's a hole involved.
Yeah.
So technically cursed on your air.
It's all good.
He was, there was a lot of people that didn't dig him too much, and then I think some years later you hear Joe Montana coming out with, he was basically a joke, I hate to go here with this again, but a little bit of that nerdy kid that you coddle a little bit and you give attention to. But yeah, that was a very, very saccharine version of quote unquote Rudy. He talk about someone that got quite a bit of a lot from very little talent. And I also even remember that as a kid watching that game on Saturday afternoon against Georgia Tech when he had the sack. That is real, and that happened. But in terms of the other stuff, and like even guys giving up their jerseys the way they did in that movie, that was all pure fiction. He had a little bit more of the Pally story as well because guys wanted to beat on him. He was just a nudge. He was a pain in the butt, and wasn't very well liked. And I didn't have certainly. I mean, how the guys rallied around Rudy in the movie. Mm-hmm. Not the case at all. Not the case at all. I mean, he might have had a handful of guys that liked him, and I also thought it portrayed Dan Devine in a very, very negative way. As a matter of fact, I think Dan Devine had some issues with his portrayal in the movie.
Yeah, it is crazy how they will manipulate, stories and afterwards. So, what about the other teams in Philadelphia? What's the big things going on with the Flyers?
Well, the Flyers had a 10-game losing streak. and everybody kind of gave up on them, and then suddenly now they are, since that losing streak, I believe they're 16-6-1. The Sixers have a great, strong following. They've sold out the building. They beat San Antonio last night for the first time, and they beat San Antonio for the first time since 2004.
Oh, wow.
So, there's some things going on there. It's an incredibly talented team. It's an incredibly talented team that has this ability to lose double-figure leads. So they haven't exactly cured that. In my opinion, they are not where they should be right now. They should be more advanced than where they are right now. But they are coming along. They are, I believe, slightly above 500. And I'll say this too: with the Eagles' success and what the Eagles have been able to do, I think all boats rise. And again, I was a kid and I saw that here with the Flyers and those Broad Street Bully teams of the early to mid '70s with the back-to-back Stanley Cups, and they reached the Stanley Cup a third straight time and lost to a Hall of Fame-filled Montreal Canadiens team. They were swept in that series, and I think 3 of the 4 games in that series were decided by 1 goal. But that was also a Hall of Fame-filled Flyers team. And the difference there was that the Philadelphia sports landscape was barren. It was an absolute joke. Flyers win a couple Stanley Cups, and then all of a sudden, you got the owner of the sports franchises in the city get up off their tails and just say, "Hey, listen, we saw 2 million people fill Center City, Philadelphia, for an ice hockey team that's only been in existence for 6-7 years. When the Flyers won in '74, they were in existence for 7 years. Which right now, right in that time, in the time of expansion, that was unheard of. Mm-hmm. So they all decided. And look what happened. Look what happened to the Philadelphia landscape after those Flyers teams won back-to-back Stanley Cups. You have the Phillies with a young core that grew up in Luzinski, Schmidt, Boa. They pick up Steve Carlton in the draft. Bob Boone through their farm system comes up. They win the franchise's first World Series championship in 1980. You had the Eagles. Suddenly, they fired, I believe it was Mike McCormick. They hired Vermeil. The Eagles turned into Super Bowl contenders. And then you have the Sixers, who I believe it was either 72 or 73, won a grand total of 9 games. I think that's still an NBA all-time low. And over an 82-game schedule. I think the Charlotte Hornets won less in a short season. But the Sixers won only 9 games. And the Sixers recently, I think, even threatened that record of futility by winning 10 games. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. But in 72 or 73, the Sixers won 9 games in a season. There was a local newspaper, I believe it might have been either the Inquirer News, that refused to cover the games. They were so pathetic. And then they get a new owner, and they get George McGinnis, and they make a trade, and they buy Dr. J, and then eventually that leads to a Sixers championship in 1983. But the Sixers were perennial title contenders, if you remember, from the mid to late '70s into the mid '80s. But it started with those Flyers teams winning back-to-back Stanley Cups. And right now you have an Eagles team that hopefully the other owners see this and just all boats rise. And let's get off the process button and start acting and start doing things and start being proactive instead of waiting for things and showing a little patience required. But, in this day and age, you could turn around and flip a team and make them contenders. I think the greatest story in sports right now is the Vegas Golden Knights.
Oh, yeah. They have come out of nowhere with being an expansion team. It's amazing what they've done.
Yeah, and it gets lost. It gets lost in the shuffle because it is ice hockey, and excuse me, to a point, ice hockey is the 4th sport in this country. Falling probably a distant 4th now. Obviously, the NFL, followed by the NBA. Drifting off a little bit in the 3rd is Major League Baseball, and then a little bit of a dot in the distance, I would say, is the NHL and hockey. It certainly has more following than it did, I would say, 15, 20 years ago. They have a major network behind them NBC, which is now Philly based. But it's a great story. It's an amazing story of what they're doing, and I got to look this up, but I'm pretty sure if they pull this off and win the Stanley Cup, they will probably be the first expansion franchise in the history of the four major sports to win a world championship in their first year of existence.
Oh, definitely. There's been no one really to excel like that in the first year. I mean, nowadays though they're doing it the right way. I mean, they're picking up those the contracts that the teams don't want. And that's helped them a lot. And then, of course, they had a lot of cap room for free agency, and just, I mean, taking that extra year before they started, because they had been around, but they weren't, involved in the league that first year. So they're really doing it the right way.
And it also seems to be, I don't know a whole lot of the Vegas team, but not just Vegas. I get the impression again. And going back here and in my backyard with the Eagles, this is a team that seems to have taken Herb Brooks' design. Still one of the greatest coaching jobs, if not the greatest coaching job ever in sports, and directing that 1980 Olympic hockey team, which, by the way, has come up quite often in Philadelphia with this Eagles team. Because again, they see the New England Patriots as the big, dark, bear, like the Russian bear, that 1980s Olympic Soviet Union hockey team. I think that had won 42 or 44 straight games, something like that. And then you have this team, by the way, which we know now, an incredibly talented U.S. Olympic hockey team. I mean, a lot of those guys, a good handful of those guys, went on to play for 8, 9, 10, 12 years in the NHL, right off the tip of my head. Ramsey and Ken Morrow, those guys were around forever. I believe Neil Broughton was on that team. Dave Krischer was on that team. Johnson, who might have been the best player on the ice that night, the Team USA beat the Soviet Union. Mark Johnson. But this team here, this Eagles team, seems to be, it's more so a team than, even if you remember the movie Miracle, where the Herb Brooks character says, that's why you guys lose, because you think a bunch of all-stars as individuals can come together as a team. It doesn't work like that. You have a lot of moving parts here in Philadelphia that all fit well together.
Makes sense. What's your thoughts on the eighth movie in the Rocky series, Creed 2?
Well, I understand. I think it's where Creed goes back and avenges his father's death against
Drago. Yeah, Drago's kid.
That's going to be it. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if I dig that.
Yeah, it's a little odd. Yeah, it's an odd one.
Yeah, that is what that is Sylvester Stallone's friends with Dolph Lundgren, and Dolph Lundgren exactly hasn't had the most stellar career. I remember Quentin Tarantino. I think he worked as an underling on one of the Dolph Lundgren movies, and Quentin Tarantino basically said, the guy treated me like a jerk, and he says he would never be in anything that I do. He never thought I'd make it. Obviously, he was a gopher for one of the Dolph Lundgren movies, and Dolph basically treated him like a piece of trash, and like, wrong guy to treat like trash coming up there, pal. That is a wrong guy you want to mistreat, because obviously Quentin Tarantino is
been amazing, yeah.
Yeah, and he's a mover and shaker in Hollywood, and Dolph's lucky if he has any parts if it's Buddy Stallone's not involved. So I it'll be interesting to sell a little bit, bringing the past to the present. But I think they should stick with the formula they had that made Creed, in my opinion, very successful. And he lost the fight. He honored his late father, and he gets another title shot. Maybe they can make or stir someone to play the bad guy boxer role, because there's with my close affiliation with the sport, there's certainly a number of guys there that they could, certainly a number of characters in the sport of boxing that they can create to create a good guy, bad guy scenario.
Yeah, I was hoping he was going to end up fighting the one fella early in the movie that knocked him out or knocked him down in the ring. When they were doing just the practice, because that guy didn't get his title shot, but he probably would have gotten the title when the other fellow went to jail. At least that's what I thought. I thought they would have set up something with that kind of a rematch feel to it.
Well, were you referring to the sparring session?
Yeah, the sparring session. Yeah.
Okay, that was against true Olympian gold medalist Andre Ward.
Oh yeah, that'd have been great to have him end up winning the title because the other fellow went to jail.
Okay.
Yeah, because
that's an interesting scenario. Because I know Andre. I know Andre well. I know Andre personally. Andre was a very, very intelligent guy. He just retired from the sport. And knowing Andre and how smart Andre is, he's going to stay retired.
Yeah.
But yeah, he would be. The thing is, though, Andre, I don't know. Andre could play a bad guy. Yeah. Andre is he's inherently a good guy. I don't know. It would take a hell of a lot of work to make Andre Ward a bad guy in any scenario. That would be a little bit of a tough sell because again, you need the good guy, bad guy thing, or even making Andre that talkative, Apollo Creed type of guy, a Muhammad Ali type of character. Again, that's not Andre. He's a pretty good guy. He's a very humble, feet on the earth, very God-fearing man. And I know acting requires quite a bit. It would take an actor. It would take an actor to do that. And Andre, I don't know, has the acting chops to go against who he exactly is, and that's a pretty damn good guy.
Cool. Last year, obviously, the biggest fight for non-boxing fans was the Mayweather-Conor McGregor. What do you feel the big fight's going to be this year?
Well, I'm hearing some talk possibly of Vasily Lomachenko, who's I'm the president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, and Vasily is our Fighter of the Year, which we announced a couple weeks ago. He's thinking about the possibility of moving from 130 to 135, which are some interesting names and interesting matchups. The name that keeps on coming up is Mikey Garcia. So from a fight fan's perspective, a Mikey Garcia, Vasily Lomachenko fight is huge. In terms of crossover appeal, in terms of where they can get maybe 40 or 50,000 in an outdoor stadium, like an AT&T stadium, or even a Yankee stadium. I'd love to have them bring it to Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia in June or July. But the big fight, the international, the world fight that has crossover appeal is Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. Joshua just made his fight recently against Joseph Parker, and I'll be seeing Deontay fight Luis Ortiz March 3rd in Brooklyn. So that is the huge fight, and they are legitimate heavyweights. They are very, very good at what they do. There's a personality to both of them, and we're not exactly, and will never be at a golden age where you had Ali and Frazier and Foreman and Ken Norton. I mean, even who was it right now? The name escapes me. Jerry Quarry. Jerry Quarry was a good heavyweight. Jerry Quarry today would be a heavyweight champion. Jerry Quarry was that good. Jimmy Young from Philadelphia, who had bit of an awkward defensive style, but you could go 7, 8, 9, 10 deep, and these guys were monsters. Ali, Frazier, Foreman, Ken Norton, right off the top. You had Holmes that was coming up there in that era. We won't see that era again because there's simply not enough quality good guys. But you do see guys like right off the bat, Wilder and Ortiz. Wilder's very good. I don't know if Wilder's good enough to be a world champion in that era. He's good enough to be a champion in this era. Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua could potentially be an all-time great. Luis Ortiz is good. He's competitive. You have Joseph Parker. So it's a good mix right now of at least 4 or 5, possibly 60 in terms of competitors in the heavyweight division. And it could make some interesting matchups and fights over these next 2, 3, 4 years. The problem, hopefully, that they get over is this old boxing bromide, let the fight wait, let the fight stew, and let it marinate, so to speak. I don't believe that. Maybe because you let Gennady Golovkin, and saw Canelo Alvarez marinate. And what did that do? That backfired. It backfired because you had Mayweather drop a bomb 3 weeks prior to that fight to a fight in Gennady Golovkin and Alvarez that should have happened at least 2 or 3 years ago. 2 or 3 years prior to the fight happening. You know, they would have turned around. They wouldn't have been able to have to compete against the Mayweather-McGregors of the world. They would have had their own time and their own place, their own situation. You know, don't let these freaking things wait. You've got a chance to turn around and get these guys in the ring. We need to build them up. Well, I think fight fans, enough fight fans, people know Deontay Wilder. People know Anthony Joshua. Do they have crossover appeal? I wince and say no. But I think through word of mouth and through some of the people that still cover the sport would get it out there that a Deontay Wilder-Anthony Joshua fight is a huge fight. The days of Ali Frazier won, those days are done. The boxing does not have that kind of appeal anymore. At least in this country, it does not. Internationally, it's huge. I mean, if I'm Wilder, I'll tell you what. If I'm Wilder, I might fight that fight in England because he's going to be fighting in front of 90 to 100,000 people. I'd fight that fight in England. 90,000 people in a soccer stadium. Why fight in the United States? The Klitschko's for years didn't fight in the United States. Why? Because they're fighting in front of 60, 70, 80,000 people. You know, they're getting millions of people watching on pay-per-view. So, you know, where this country is, where it is in terms of the sport of boxing, you know, if you want to follow it, fine, great. I hope they do. But these fighters today have other options, and it is a global sport. And I think that's where fight fans in this country, or at least budding fight fans, people that have passing interest in the sport, have an issue because it's far more global than it was when I was a kid. I mean, I grew up. I grew up with Duran, Hagler, Hearns, Leonard. As I say that, I have a big smile on my face. I was a kid. I mean, we all had favorite fighters growing up. I mean, sports crazy fans had favorite fighters growing up as kids. You don't see that anymore.
Well, that gives me a perfect segue because you were mentioning about how, unfortunately, boxing isn't what it used to be in the States. And then you mentioned Hagler. His son is in charge of the ABA, and they're emphasizing champions from the States. Do you feel like a program like that is going to help rebuild boxing in the U.S.? I mean, obviously not to what it used to be, but at least, build it up some.
No, I don't. I need to believe in stuff like that. I need to believe in programs like that because they come up, 3 or 4 or 5 of them, 6 of them come up every year, and they get bogged down with. Certainly, first and foremost, they get bogged down with the lack of finances. They get bogged down with politics because everybody, and it still bothers the sport, it still hampers the sport because they don't get it. Everybody has their own individual agendas. And those individual agendas are not to look out for the benefit of the sport as a whole. Boxing still fails to realize, again, using the term I used earlier with the Eagles, all boats rise, that doesn't apply to boxing because they're only concerned with their own boat. And you see it in promotions, you see it in, there are fights to be made out there, and there are political entanglements that prevent those fights from being made. Mayweather Pacquiao should have been made before it was made. Because of the political entanglements, the people had to wait for that fight. You're dealing with. I just don't. There's pessimism because boxing spawns pessimism. I'm not going to get any specifics, but when you have people turn around and look you in the face and openly lie to you, which has happened to me a number of times. Mm-hmm. I just don't. I'd like to see it happen. I want to see it happen. I hope it happens, but I'd have to see it now to believe it, and that's the stage we're in. I hope the best for Hagler's son. I think Marvin, by the way, himself still lives in Italy. He was so disgruntled after his controversial loss to Sugar Ray Leonard, that he moved out of the country. I think he even married an Italian woman, and he was a movie star for a time there in Europe. So every once in a while he comes back to the States. He spends time here. I know he's usually in the States during Hall of Fame weekend, which is June, up in Canastota, New York. But going back full circle to Marvelous Marvin's son, I hope the best for him, but do I think anything could happen? I have to see it to believe it. I mean, what needs to happen is, first off, there needs to be better coaching out there. Not conditioning coaching, old school coaching, old school guys that know the sport. You know, we have a handful in Philadelphia, but only a handful. You can go in almost any gym at one time in Philadelphia and find, 4 or 5 or 6 guys alone in that one gym that had some old school ways about them. Today, in the city, I could look out throughout the whole city. If I had a young son that had a boxing ability over the whole city, I might look at 4 or 5 guys alone in the whole city, not just in one gym. And that's where things are right now. So the teaching at the grassroots level has to be better. So that's a start. The other start is getting younger kids involved in the sport in terms of self-defense. Now, if they like it and they want to take it further and they see a career in it, fine. It is a sport of great risk, like football. We're seeing football go in this direction. Football is going to spiral downward because fewer and fewer kids are participating in it. Fewer and fewer, what you're getting is the same thing in football as what you used to get in boxing. I mean, boxing is the lowest common denominator, that poor kid on the street looking for a way out. And that's what you're going to see more and more in football because mommy is not going to let Junior, put that helmet on and play the game, in certain areas of this country. Actually, a lot of areas in this country. I see a lot of kids that are very, very capable of being good quality football players that play other sports because simply their parents won't allow them to play the game. But in boxing's a little bit different again. You still have kids from tough, poor neighborhoods that still see the sport as an outlet. It's just that there's not many of those kids that, where they used to be. I mean, Muhammad Ali came from a middle-class background. And obviously you're down there in Kentucky, you know the story. He has a bike stall and he comes in. But he came from a middle-class background whose cousins and aunts and uncles, they were teachers. They had college degrees. There was something out there. But this is what Ali picked up as a child. But now in this day and age, Muhammad Ali coming up, we'll just say a kid from a middle-class background. Today, Muhammad Ali is an outside linebacker in the NFL. He's a quarterback in the NFL. He's a guard in the NBA. He's not putting on those gloves and being a heavyweight champion boxer.
Exactly, because of options. Kind of like what they bring up in the movie Creed, where they're like, why are you going to do this? You don't have to. You're rich. So that I see what you're saying. Before I let you go, what social media, what websites can fans follow you at, hear that insight and learn more about sports?
I'm on CBS Philly. I'm one of the feature writers and contributing writers to Ring Magazine and RingTV.com. My Twitter is, I have the little Stewie Griffin cartoon at J, my first name, my first initial J, last name Santoliquito, SANTOLIQUITO. That's my Twitter account, my Twitter handle. And BWAA.org. People can, I have my email there, and people can reach me through that. Primarily, I am a boxing guy with the various outlets that I cover the sport for, Ring, and I also write for PBC. But I cover the Eagles for CBS Philly, and in the city of Philadelphia, and Philly Voice. I do a weekly show with Brandon Brooks, the starting Pro Bowl right guard for the Eagles for Philly Voice, and I do a weekly show with Malcolm Jenkins for CBS Philly, which is probably going to get more intense, obviously, with this week coming up.
Oh,
so I'm looking forward to it. This is 1, 2, 3. This is going to be my 5th Super Bowl, and I veiled the first 3 were 3 of the 4 Buffalo Super Bowls where I just was. I was a kid out of college, and I was a nervous wreck, and I basically stayed in my hotel room, and I was afraid of my own shadow. The one Super Bowl in Dallas, helped me out here. That was either 2008, 2009. Flew down the day of, covered the game, wrote the game in a freaking airport, took a flight back. This time I'm going out. It's Philadelphia. I was born and raised in the city, and I'm tempering myself, being the journalist. That comes first. And then, secondly, if they win, after I'm done following my story, after I'm done doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to be honest with you and your audience. Will I be happy? Yeah. After I'm done, after I file everything, after my job is finished, and then I can go into, being that little kid again that used to jump up and down with his old man, watching the Eagles lose week after week. So it'll be kind of neat. I had a chance to meet Wilbur Montgomery in person last week. He came by for the NFC Championship game, and I was that kid again. I excused myself. I apologized to him. I had my credential around my neck. I said, "I'm sorry. If you don't mind, if I can take a picture with you." And then I literally put my credential back on again. I went from that's how that's how literal I took it. I'm here to cover the game. I took the credential off. Went into fan mode for maybe about 10 seconds. But it was neat to meet someone that, as a kid, I saw, and it's still one of the greatest moments in Philadelphia sports history, that 42-yard touchdown run in the 1980 NFC Championship game against the Dallas Cowboys. And hopefully this Eagles team will learn the lessons of past Eagles teams. They won't sit on the ball like they did in the 2004 Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. If you remember, New England's up 24-14. The Eagles are taking their good old time running down the field. I think it took them 6 or 7 minutes to score. Bill Belichick is wondering, why is he taking his time with this? We're up by 10. They need to score twice. So I don't think you'll see, I hope you won't see that happen. And the other thing I really, really hope is that this team does not go in to Super Bowl 52 tight, like that 1980s Eagles Super Bowl team that lost to the Oakland Raiders in New Orleans.
Exactly. I mean, that's going to be huge. We wish you and the city of Philadelphia the best when it comes to that. And I can definitely.
We're not all bad. We get to pick it in certain ways, but not everybody that walks through the Lincoln Financial Field parking lot gets mugged. Eagles fans, they're not all bad. I can vouch for that.
Excellent. That's good to hear. Yeah, because, obviously you're known for hating Santa Claus, so it's, makes it a little tough.
Well, listen, I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. This has been awesome. Down the road, we'd love to have you back on again if you had free time. Obviously, with having, good Lordy, that list of responsibilities, I can imagine that's a tough find, free time.
Yeah. When I'm not working, I'm working. I tell friends and family.
Exactly.
But I enjoy what I do. I enjoy telling people stories. Well, listen, if anybody wants to look this up, I got a chance to speak to John Dornbos, the long snapper, the guy that I think the nation knows about now with John's Magic. And I have a couple of updated stories on where John is. John underwent open heart surgery. He could have been killed. He could have been killed if he played this year.
Oh, my. Sheesh.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to look that up, it's a very, very interesting story on what John had to face and what John overcame.
Definitely. Shoot. What was the website where they can look that up?
That is on Philly Voice. They could Google my name or Google John Dornbos and Philly Voice, or Google John Dornbos and my name, and those two stories should pop up. The recent one is how well he's doing and his progress. The first one was what he actually went through when they found his heart malfunction, and what led to his premature retirement. Because he was open to play at least another 1 or 2 more years.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's good to hear he did the right thing, and it's kind of like Chris Bosh, where they realize health is more important, and and did what they needed to do. But yeah, definitely thank you, Joseph, for coming on the show. Greatly appreciate it. Go Eagles, mostly because everybody hates the Patriots. And yeah, definitely wish you all the best. Enjoy your time down there next week at the Super Bowl.
Okay, will do. Thanks again for having me.
Welcome.